sense of soul.
Hey, Soul Seekers, it's Shanna. Journey with me to discover how people around the world awaken to their true sense of soul. Now go grab your coffee and open your mind, heart, and soul.
It's time to awaken.
Today on Sense of Soul, I have with me Debbi Dachinger. She is the host of the award-winning show Dare to Dream, where she focuses on extraterrestrials, channeling UFOs, shamanism, and cutting-edge spirituality. She is a certified shamanic energy practitioner, certified wine specialist, and the lead singer in the band Lions of Lyra. She has written several international best-selling books and leads online and in-person shamanic healing experiences, and is a journalist for extraterrestrial and shamanic information. She bridges the ancient and extraordinary where shamanic practices and extraterrestrial encounters intersect. And she's with us today to have an out-of-this-world galactic conversation. Please welcome Debbi. How are you, Debbi?
I just literally drove back from the desert from an event.
Nice. Well, I hope you had a good time.
I did. It was amazing. Yes, always.
Thank you so much for coming on Sense of Soul finally. I've been working with you a little bit behind the scenes. You represent some of my most favorite guests that I've had on Sense of Soul.
That makes me feel really good. They're my favorite people, too.
So I got to meet Amy Robeson.
Awesome. Where did you meet?
She came here when she was recording GAIA.
Oh, so you're in Colorado. Great.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish I'd known because I was on GAIA too. That would have been amazing.
But yeah, you've been building a tribe, I see. And, I'd love to hear how you got there.
Well, there is many places. So just to be clear, that is what you're referring to is a really small piece of what I do. But my actual there, how I arrived where I am right now, like probably most people, massive spiritual awakening. I was very spiritual my whole life. I was on a path. I started doing radio 18 years ago this month. And then that word podcasting came along and I threw my hat in that ring as well. And so Dare to Dream with Debbi Dachinger was born quite some time ago. And I started realizing as I was interviewing people what my proclivities were. It's like, yeah, it's spiritual, but I'm starting to really love the channelers and I'm really loving the cutting edge information. And then I left the country 6 years ago to do ayahuasca. And just to be clear, I had done it before then and I did it many times after. But this time was different. I was out of country. We drank ayahuasca 4 nights back to back. And I had an experience much like many people do who are using it for growth. I healed a lot of things. I saw a lot of amazing things. But the big turning point, the pivotal point for me was starting the first night and I had a visitation from the divine and she gave me information about myself that was really confusing. So she came and said, Debbi, you're a healer, you're a shaman, and you're a priestess. I didn't know what to do with that, so I argued. I argued for my limitations, like, no, I'm not. What does that mean? And my friends are healers. I'm not a healer. I didn't understand. And the shaman thing was so strange because I understood what it took to become a shaman. Decades and decades of discipline and being chosen by your lineage, by spirit. I didn't feel any of that. And so she was relentless and kind and gracious. And she came every single night with the same exact mantra, Debbi, you're a shaman, you're a healer, you're a priestess. And so by the last night, she was asking me to get blessings from the shamans, that was a whole nother situation because I was arguing. I didn't want to do it, but I got tired of bucking up against her. And they did. They were very lovely about it. They gave me these beautiful blessings. When I came back to the United States, I didn't know what to do with this information. I was sharing it with a very gifted friend of mine, and he said, hey, tell you what, let's do a couple of past life regressions and see if there's anything there. We did the past life regressions, and I immediately saw myself as a male shaman. I experienced that lifetime. And then another session, I saw myself as a Mayan, as a priestess in her temple. However, she was not looking like you and I look. She was over 7 feet tall, extremely skinny, and she behaved in a way I found quite beautiful, with the most minimal of everything, what she was able to convey and actually create. So before I left her, I asked some questions, and I was making a lot of assumptions. And she shook her head and she raised her finger and telepathically said, "I'm not from here. I am from another galaxy." So I came out of that session and I thought, oh my God, I've been making fun, and I have. I was that person who is super spiritual, but if it came to UFOs and ETs, I was like, huge eye roller. I was an open-minded skeptic. So that happened, and I saw the truth. I saw that I had had galactic lives, lots, and it completely changed my trajectory. And because I didn't know what to do with that information, Shanna, I then did what any journalist would do. You start aggregating, you collect information, you get on a path. And I started taking shaman programs, really serious ones from some of the greatest shamans around the world, and long periods of time, year-long programs and so forth, and getting certified as a healer. Then out of nowhere, I started getting invited to speak around the world and on TV and on podcasts like yours, because I found an intersection between shamanism and extraterrestrials. And even that has opened up to so many more things I speak about. So that's how I got here or there. And that is the trajectory that I am on.
Did you have a spiritual background at all, like a religious background?
No. Not at all. I was raised Jewish, and I loved it for the ritual, the song, the dance, the food. It was beautiful to me, but I had no spiritual connection to it. I mean, I identified, my father was in the Holocaust and so forth. So, there's a lot in my lineage. However, no, I never felt spirituality there. But from the time I was very little, because books were big in our family, tarot, astrology. I was always outside of, especially growing up, what was the norm. So always spiritual, but then these other pieces didn't come along till 6 years ago.
I really feel like my journey, and it sounds like yours, awakening and realizing we are connected to these lineages, and it's like a remembering almost. So because of your Jewish background, do you feel like there was a connection to the Kabbalah or Jewish mysticism?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and Jewish mysticism is beautiful. I did study Kabbalah for a while. And then there were moments like I have a lot of family in Israel. Most of my family is there. And one time I was there on one of the many trips I took, and my uncle took me to a store because you can pick anything out. And I was not really aware. I was young. And I remember choosing this necklace. Honestly, of all the necklaces I could have chosen, it was not the most beautiful, but there was something compelling. And I remember bringing it home, and I have an Israeli cousin who's super spiritual and into this stuff. And he took one look at it and he goes, "My God, you picked the tree of life and all of Kabbalah symbols on this Jewish star." And I was like, but of course, so it had resonance, vibration, and frequency. So always drawn to things like that. But my home wasn't there. Even though I took those classes, and I'm grateful I did, and I learned a lot. For me, I've been a collector along the way, all these different modalities. And I would say the strongest thing I have right now is to shamanism, is to the indigenous.
And this is like beyond this earth as well. Are you really a lead singer of a band called Lions of Lyra?
I am. Yes, I sing. I was an actress and a singer before I got into all this professionally. And then, something happened, and it was very strange because from the time I was born, really, that's all I did, all I wanted to do. That's all I went to school, college, everything for. That's what I did when I left college. And then I had this big, strange thing come up, which many of us do, which is like, I'm not sure I want to do this anymore. And that was massively confusing. If not this, then what? So I had to do a big surrender just to see what was going to come because I didn't know. It wasn't here in my head. And I'm very grateful that I let go because that opened up the door to more. Now, when I started doing radio, because I was doing radio, I was writing books, I was coaching people how to write books, I was doing some PR work, it was a lot of media. I thought there's just so much of me to go around. I have to release singing. And I did. I left the band I was with and everything. And I moved forward. I had no regrets. And then it was during actually a Huachuma ceremony, San Pedro ceremony, that the divine came and said to me, what happened to music? I didn't have an answer. I used to be a great violin player, a guitar player. Singing was my big strength. And I told the shaman when we were done in the integration circle, I said, this was so interesting, like random out of nowhere. That point, it had been like 13 years since I had sung. And the shaman had a beautiful story about his journey with music and why he let it go and what happened to bring it back. And he was an amazing flautist. And he said, Debbie, it never left you. Start doing it. So my partner, Rob, is a classical guitar player. I'm a singer. We immediately started singing. 1 month later, we got booked in a gig, and we're leaving in 3 weeks, fly back east for somebody's retreat where we're performing. And we do a lot of that, like Galactic sound baths, but we also do very uplifting message music. So it's a joy. It's a joy to have all these creative outlets.
Wow. Sound's been coming up a lot on my podcast. And I don't know if you have that on yours. I'm sure you do, where like everything comes in divinely. So like for the past 3 months, I've been hit hard with like, frequency and vibration and sound healings, stuff like that. It's like it comes together.
Well, I mean, it's here to assist us. There's no accident. This is why light language is becoming more and more prevalent because it's actually one of the languages of the future, and the future is already here now. And we know that sound, music, frequency, hertz, it does everything. If we match the Earth's frequency, we will have our heartbeat resonate with her. We can do that of the cosmos. We can do that of being calm. So all these things are so important to heal us right now because there's a lot happening, but at the same time, there's a lot of ascension things and solar things and global things. We're also being given these wonderful tools to heal, to be present in our body, and to help us ascend and stay calm in all of it and abundant because we all came here incredibly gifted at this time to help what's going on. So I love sound frequency. And I think it was Nikola Tesla, who I'm a huge fan of knowing his whole life story, who said, if you want to understand the entire universe, understand sound, frequency, and vibration. And so it is. That was so true.
Well, I have the craziest story about Nikola Tesla that a lot of people don't know. And so it's a very interesting little synchronicity story that started with the Keys of Enoch book, which I know you're familiar with the her talks. And there's a part of the Keys of Enoch, a page early on. When I first got it, I opened it up and it said Return of the Dove. And it was like the ley lines like mapped out in the shape of a dove on like a map of North America. At the time I was doing some art, I literally had just created that entire day a globe with like a dove on the front of it, with like hands all around it. And so it was kind of interesting. I was like, wow, that's exactly what I had done earlier in the day. And then even more on the front of the book, there's all these hands that are like, going to the dove. And actually I did reach out to the Hertox and had him on my podcast around that time. But I was also studying Plena Petrovna Blavatsky. I was really deep in the Gnostic Gospels, having all these experiences with doves. And one night, this dove drops dead on my porch. And I was so flipped out. And it was at night, too. It was so weird. I'd been sitting with the lone dove for like 2 weeks. All of a sudden, this little baby dove is trying to come to my porch. And sure enough, 2 baby doves were born on my porch. So I look up Return of the Dove because that's what I had remembered from the Keys of Enoch. Well, I find this book by Margaret Storm. She wrote a book, an autobiography on Nikola Tesla back in the 1950s. The reason why it's Return of the Dove is because Nikola Tesla had this love for a dove. The book is about him, but it's also about everything you were just talking about. It's all about the extraterrestrial lineages. And she went missing to never be found again. The last time she was heard of was on a radio show in I want to say it was 1950 by then. And somebody bought every single book off of the shelf. And the only thing you will find is a copy of the book. And I have one, but it's like Xeroxed copied.
I hope you'll share it with me. I don't know if it's a PDF, but it was such a weird time. But I guess we're still in weird times with disclosure. There's 2 really interesting things about that. The first one is, when Nikola Tesla died, the moment he died, the government descended on his New York apartment. So by the time his son got the word, by the way, your dad just passed, by the time his son made it to his father, Nikola Tesla's apartment, it had already been ransacked by the government, everything confiscated and taken. The son, never got to see it or own it. So that part is very interesting in conjunction with this woman writing about him and going missing, and then all her books being purchased. Wow.
Yeah. If you look up her name, where you will find her is in the CIA declassified files. Yeah.
She knew too much. Yes. And I was going to say for you, so when that happens, I know it's very difficult when an animal dies of any nature, especially people like us who love animals and, wouldn't want to see something like that. But I do have to say to you, it would be great if you took a little bit of time and just Googled dove medicine. Dove spirit medicine, because you receive that in a painting, you receive that in connection with Nikola, you receive that with one of them passing. When it passes in front of you, it's saying, I am going to die on your behalf to give you my medicine. And then if that wasn't enough, you saw a birth. There's something there for you that's very powerful.
There's a lot of synchronicity with that dove, and that dove is that mediator between heaven and earth. It always has been known in all kinds of different cultures.
And peace.
Yes, and also peace. Yes. And so it was kind of disturbing at first, but I did move through that. But there was a lot of fear, which was so conditioned in me, to fear that and not see death as transition with shamans do. They don't look as death as that final, part of our existence. It's just that transition or like graduation to the next step.
Absolutely. Yeah. Shamanism looks at a lot of things different than Western.
But, I want to talk about the extraterrestrials. It's not something I always get to talk about. So I'm like, yes, let's do it.
I'm so glad you want to talk about extraterrestrials because I just came back from Contact in the Desert where I spent 5 days, and that was kind of the conversation, ETs, UFOs, disclosures with some of the greatest minds. And this is the stuff I love to talk about. And I just know it's a matter of time, and it's not a long time now, where we're heading back to another emergence with that, with becoming part of the galactic community. And we used to be, but we separated for many reasons. And we've been in a very interesting stalled pattern, but we're not going to remain there. It is definitely our destiny, and especially those who are on that timeline, to become part of the galactic community. I know some people say, oh, that's so exciting. I can't wait. Take me now. You don't want to be taken now. You have to understand their vibration is so high, so advanced that it would be difficult for us in this dense body to connect with them like that. It's difficult for them in their very light body to connect with us. And it's not going to be like the TV and the movies, like they're landing somewhere, and they come out of a spacecraft. I mean, that stuff is so old and so not what it's like, but it will be benevolent. It absolutely will be benevolent. And, they're waiting for us to somewhat get it together So they feel safe to come here because, the government has tried to shoot them down. They've confiscated their technology and replicated it and so forth. So it has to be a little bit different than it is now for it to be welcoming and safe for them and, an exciting proposal. But I think those of us, especially those of us who are deeply on the spiritual path, doing the healing work, looking at ourselves, doing the shadow projection work and being responsible, etc., I think we are changing certainly our collective timeline for that to happen.
When I read the Bible with new eyes, the first thing I thought of was, holy crap, are angels aliens? So this like spiritual connection with humans and benevolent beings, do you feel like they're the same or that they're not?
I don't think they're the same at all.
You
No.
don't?
I think there's more galaxies than we could possibly comprehend. The universe is so vast and growing and growing and growing. There are more types of species and beings we have had akashically. We have different, right? Some people who are old souls, let's say, have had tons of galactic lifetimes and maybe less so here on Earth, or maybe both. But I believe angels are angels, seraphim are seraphim, Elohim are Elohim, archangels are archangels. I don't know if they'd like being mixed up with extraterrestrials. Are they aware of each other? 1,000%. Yes. But a Pleiadian is a Pleiadian. That's like saying, is Debbie from Earth an angel? No, not in this incarnation. I am an Earth being.
So you don't see them as having their own planet, the angels, like they're more ethereal in, say, like the pleroma.
It's hard for us to imagine because we're used to being on a planet. So we think of everything as like you need to have a place.
3D, like a solid. Yeah.
Exactly. But they're
Yeah.
not solid. They
Right.
manifest their energy. So they don't need that. But some of them are way closer to the source energy. Some of them are co-creators. Some of them are creating planets and beings and having fun doing all that. So it's a rich universe, but I don't believe they have or need a home.
Okay. We're talking, that's like angelic beings, right?
Angelic beings,
Okay.
yes.
But I'm thinking, are extraterrestrials more 3D like us?
Well, it's a big question.
Some of them are, some of them aren't. Does it, maybe it just depends on their, how high their consciousness is.
Well,
Or just,
exactly.
yeah.
1,000%. So many people, we look at ourselves like, oh, we're like the kindergartners. And then you think about these very advanced civilizations. I think it's very important to remember we are the advanced civilizations. That's us in the future, right? So when you
Right.
see a spacecraft, that's usually someone who might know you, some kind of
Mhm.
familial tie coming back to present. And God knows I've had many spacecrafts that have revealed themselves to me. Took me believing first. They weren't going to really reveal themselves to me before then. But once I recognized, oh my goodness, this is true, it started happening a lot. And so, yeah, they are in different places now. Also, they're different dimensions. So there's many beings. So here we are operating third, fourth dimension. A lot of us hoping to ascend to the fifth dimension, but many of them are ninth, 12th, 48th, all the way up. So they really don't even require a body. They are just energy. They're thought form. They go on forever. Bashar is actually a great example of that. And so, yes, some of them are 3D, but also the conditions are different. Some of them are aquatic beings and they live in the oceans. Some of them are more insectoid, so they have different conditions. So it's not like there's a lot of Earth out there, different Earth planets with different beings, although it seems more and more like there are alternate Earths, alternate timelines, alternate Earths. But in general, out in the cosmos, many different types of planets. And the more I get to know some of these amazing extraterrestrials, the more I see how beautiful they are to their planet, that they live in harmony with their planet. They literally converse with their planet. They walk up to trees and put their hands on trees and say, "What is your story? Tell me all about your lifetime." And they listen. And then the tree will say, "Tell me your lifetime." So they have a completely different, very benevolent, respectful relationship with their planet, unlike most of us.
You know, in that book, The Return of the Dove, which you have to get, she talks a lot about how Nikola Tesla, he was Venetian. And, you know, when I think about extraterrestrials who, like you said, like Bashar and Deralinka, it seems like they are coming here to help humans, you know, to help humanity and to help our Earth, not to scare us. Or I'm sure if they wanted to, they could have done that a long time ago.
Absolutely. Yeah, 1,000%. It's twofold. On the one hand, it is literally their job title. Like Bashar was born into this. His father was a contact specialist. Or Lisa Royal Holt, Sasha, the Pleiadian who comes through her, she is a first contact specialist. And so that is their job. And it's not just with us. They are also first contact specialists with many different planets out there. So they establish contact. There are things they want to know because we're so different from them. So they want to know a lot about us, and they want to be available to share information with us that we're super curious about. Daryl once told me, you know, there's different waves of how this comes out before the big undeniable open contact occurs. There's different waves. You know, one of them is they go on stage and people pay to go to their workshops. And that is a great way to start meeting and connecting and forming a relationship with an extraterrestrial. Another way is through shows like mine, where I have people like that come on who are channeling, and often they'll come on 6 times over the years I'm doing it. And they are answering again to a different audience, a wide audience, all of this information. So this is thought out. There's no accidents here. They are really aware that they are sharing info, connecting with people, that this is our path. And so they're helping get us ready for the next steps.
And there are different kinds. And I mean, I have had past life regressions as well, where I was a different being, and it kind of flipped me out at first. You know, I looked down and I had webbed feet, and I didn't know what to think about that. And my ego kind of jumped in, and I was already under for like probably 3 hours. So it was a QHHT. And I almost jumped literally out of my body, out of the session. And thank God my practitioner was, you know, very sensitive to this, what I was experiencing, and pulled me out. But I still feel like it's something that I need to go back and like address, because I was so uncomfortable being in that skin.
Yeah,
Literally.
you never know. You could look down and be an octopus. You could be avian bird. It's really interesting. You know, one of my predominant galactic beings, lifetimes, and it comes up constantly, even though I've been many places, many things, but it is the lion beings. It's the Lyrans. And it's so interesting to go deep into that. Like, what is that like to be bipedal, but furry everywhere, right? And what is it like to have a sort of humanoid lioness kind of look? And something I did that was very profound. There's a really famous artist, Vashta Neruda. You can commission her without telling her anything. You can commission her to channel one of your beings and make a portrait of that being. And that was amazing. She did do a lioness of me. And this lioness had something right here embedded in her third eye. She had this gorgeous blue robe, and everything you could see was vibrating. The background, her robe, and then right here at the chest, it looked like claw marks, but they were filled in with gold. And I had to ask her, what is that? And she said, it's sacred technology. She said, so this being you were carried sacred technology and was so powerful to influence her environment that through frequency, and you could see the frequency, everything was impacted and influenced. And I thought, this is so amazing because it's akin to what I'm doing in this lifetime, communication and speaking on stages and being here with people like you, writing books, all of this stuff. It's still through my throat, my most important chakra. But God bless that they're all balanced.
I love that. And it aligned with you. It sounds like your discernment was like, yes. Like, for instance, with me, when I went into that past life, mine was like, no. Not that I didn't believe that it happened. It was so real, but it didn't align with where I'm at now in this life anyways. But, I did shadow body healing, which is like originally from Ashiana Dean's work with the Lyrans. And I also feel like a connection to the Lyrans. And a lot of people do. And so it's like that feeling of resonance with the energy.
Well, the Lyrans were the original human blueprint. So there should be resonance because we are all connected to many different genetics out there in the galaxy. And there's a whole history of how we came about our genetics. And today's science is proving it. And the original blueprint for humans before we became Homo sapiens was the Lyrans. They were the oldest, right? So it makes sense that there would be this connection, this comfort with all of that. It's in us.
In that work, there's this one poem. It's called the Psalm of the Kemolohati, and it basically describes their planet was destroyed.
Their planet was destroyed. And they did have to disperse, much like on this planet when people become refugees and ask for asylum in another country. They did all go to many different planets, but predominantly the Pleiades and Sirius. It was a really rough time to go through those wars with the Orion Draco wars, and it was relentless. They wanted the planet and they were willing to destroy the planet and many of the beings in order to get it. So yeah, that's absolutely a part of history.
And then you think about, all that junk DNA that we don't use. I mean, I think that's if I've learned anything through this journey, like everything has a purpose. And I am definitely sure that the divinity within the DNA, more than half of it is not junk.
Well, we have 3.2 billion base pairs in our DNA, and only 1.5% of it codes for protein. So many years ago, the scientists said, well, 1.5%, what is the rest? They didn't know, and they called it this junk DNA for a really long time. But then you have all these genetic scientists who came along, such as Francis Crick, who actually won a Nobel Prize for discovering DNA. And he looked at the strands way back when this was not even popular to talk about. And he said, this is too complex and there's too many changes. I can tell you right now, this DNA is not merely from Earth. And then you fast forward decades and decades later, and there are all these amazing genetic scientists who have put out papers like Shirkoff and have said, we have found when we went into it that what was once termed junk DNA is actually coded. CODED, coded for interstellar, meaning that an advanced civilization spread life across Earth, but also across the entire cosmos. And you could see that our DNA had been manipulated over and over and over again. So when people are nonplussed about extraterrestrials or not understanding or not excited, these are your cousins. These are your brothers. Some of them are your children. Many of us have been part of the hybridization program, and we literally have offspring out there. And there's reasons depending on which different type of extraterrestrial has done hybridization. They all have different reasons. The Greys have a very definite reason, and that is to keep their species going. But the other ones for different reasons. And so there's many incarnations of us out there existing, and sometimes they like to come back and check us out because they know that we're related. But our genetics since 450,000 years ago has been tinkered with, starting with the Anunnaki 450,000 years ago. And then they did some very interesting things to us that was not beneficial because we stopped living as long and we stopped being able to procreate and so forth. But the Anunnaki got to use us to mine for gold, which they needed for their planet. And then many years later, a lot of the benevolent extraterrestrials looked down on Earth and went, humanity not doing so very well because of the alterations the Anunnaki did. And so they very lovingly donated their genetics to us, the feline, the avian, the reptilian. Yes, the reptilian. Don't judge the reptiles. Also the Lyran, of course, and the bird people. So we have many thousands of strains of extraterrestrial in us, but those 5 predominant.
I also think that sound has a lot to do with also triggering that DNA to be, lit up, because it does even in me for my actual ancestors, here on Earth that I can find on my tree. So I think as we continue to connect with that resonance, really, as you said at the beginning, then we're going to connect further and further back, into our lineages, which goes back to these extraterrestrials, the origins of our ancestors.
Yeah, Lemuria, Atlantis, Egypt, and then all over the galaxy. We have been everything and nothing. We have been men, we have been women, we have been old, we've been the terrible perpetrator, we've been the victim. And it makes you realize, compassion, forgiveness, it's really important because we've been there, done that too.
I have interesting DNA, but one of my lines is Basque, which is a very rare one. It's isolated. So I've studied Basque, and also I have Ashkenazi. And so both are isolated, and they both actually are known for having Rh negative. When I did some really deep dives into them, because they're part of my lineages, one thing I had found that was common between the two was Sardinia, and there was a connection to do with Atlantis.
It's interesting because, I just heard a talk on this, actually. There's a lot of validity to what you're saying. And they even were breaking down the O negative is O positive, O positive, O negative, B, A. And then there's the RH that you're talking about, which is way more rare and very interesting. They didn't delineate about those Earth timelines, but that it has a lot of galactic in it.
Yeah.
You might want to get more comfortable with those webbed feet.
It's interesting because I always like if I think of something or something comes to me, I don't know if you do this, but I'll look to see if anybody else, can help validate that, or has anyone else talked about this? Sometimes I will find something like Rosicrucians or something. I already had this experience or something, but this one I haven't been able to find anyone making that connection between the two groups and Sardinia, which now I feel like I want to go there and do my own, like boots on the ground.
Oh, Sardinia is gorgeous. I mean, me in Italy, anything with Italy is big. But what a great history you have. Ashkenazi and also Basque. Yeah, the French, Spanish. Background, that's cheaper, right?
Oh, well,
So
that's actually just a little bit. I mean, I'm really French Creole and Czechoslovakian. So what's interesting is I have Marie Laveau in my tree. So that is really where most of my study has been, was in the Louisiana stuff. And I just didn't think about all these little other ones. But then when I went down the other little ones, I'm like, oh, dang, these are really, really important too. Yeah, I'm fascinated.
Yeah.
That's why I became a genealogist, because I've probably done like 500 trees, but I found how important it was for me in my journey and how much light I was creating within this body. So I was just becoming aware of who they were.
Yeah. I haven't done a lot of that myself. I really haven't. And it might be very interesting because I had a very famous artist in my family. I'm actually looking at his artwork right now.
Oh,
And very fortunate. Beautiful stuff, very, very well known. And I have to say, most of what I've done around ancestry and lineage is this incredible awareness of every time I'm brave enough to heal something,
Yeah.
situation, trauma, whatever it is, pattern, to have that
Yeah.
sense that the lineage is standing around saying, thank you for clearing it up all the way back. And so I am very aware of that,
Yeah.
of being a contribution, of being brave in this lifetime, and maybe assisting their lifetime, because as I change my timeline, then everything else gets unraveled as well. And I'm happy to contribute in that way.
You ever curious, hit me up. I'd love to do it for you.
Wow.
Yeah, or
Okay.
I'd love to help you, get in there. Yeah, just I think because my own was difficult. So I think that I just got really good at it in that way. And then working with so many. I've even done Amy's.
That's great. That would be interesting. Is
Yeah,
she
it
like
really
all
is.
from Earth, or I mean, like from United States, or do you
Oh no,
remember?
I've gotten all the way back to in one tree, I got all the way back to the 600s.
That's a
600.
great gift.
Yeah, it's
That's a
pretty fun.
great gift because I always like Dr. Henry Gates. He used to be on PBS. I think he still does a special now and then, but he only does celebrities. And I always wanted him to do my lineage because, like what you're saying, back to 600 years, I mean, that's what he would do to the inception of your people, all the
Right.
way wherever they lived and worked throughout the world, and things that befell them and the kind of jobs that they had. And I thought, that is so cool. And sometimes you have some relatives who did extraordinary work in the world.
Yeah. And you know what? It also is funny that I have found, and I think that it wasn't the Marie Laveaus, right? It wasn't the big people. It was, this grandma, maybe, your fourth or fifth or sixth grandmother who has been completely overlooked, who had a story to share.
What a great gift.
This is really interesting, Debbie. You would love this. So I was listening to, gosh, I think it was someone on Carrie Cassidy's YouTube. It was with Richard Allen Miller, who actually was studying galactic DNA and working with people who felt like they were Lyrans or, Palladians, and doing their DNA and trying to find connections.
Oh, I'd love to know how he's doing that. I'd like to know what he's looking at because, I mean, that is the game changer. I've always spoken about that. I've done ancestry, I've done whatever, 1, 2, 3, I've done all of that. And I find my earthly background to be very typical and fairly boring. It wasn't until I got into galactic ancestry that my whole life changed and things really started making sense. So if somebody has the ability to do that, and I'd love to know scientifically for many reasons.
He was looking for people to even donate their DNA because he's like, he only wants to work with people who believe they have this strong connection or they've gotten validation that they are of these beings. And he wants to see if there's anything unique that could identify them as they awaken their DNA. Makes sense?
This is what it's all about. And that's what I was saying. You can do the swipes and you can find out, 95% European, or I'm from England, or I'm from Africa, whatever. And at some level, you can probably look at yourself and know most of this, maybe not all. But if you could do a swipe and find out where in the galaxy you have been, who you have been, yeah, I would definitely be doing that. So maybe I'll even volunteer to learn more.
Yeah, because our body does seem to be some sort of antenna, to be able to receive. I say the word discernment often because I rely on that to tell me. So, this body I think is more divine than I've given it credit. I went through this point where I was like, it's just a meat suit. Who needs a body? But I've learned to work with it in my benefit, in this on earth, in this life.
Yeah. Scientists have found that this junk DNA is actually mathematical patterns, and it's also pictography. So it's got pictures and it's got math patterns. And
Yes.
those equate to what was left inside of us, much on purpose, but also still interacts as a way to communicate. So they can communicate with us without us even being fully aware. And this is not to scare people. I think it's fantastic. And I think it just shows how much there is no us and them, how much more intertwined we are with them. I would definitely want to look at them more.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on and for sharing. I love having conversations like this. And I know that's why we both have a lot of listeners who are looking to listen to stuff like this, because it makes you feel a little less alone in this journey, because it can sometimes feel like, oh boy, I'm the only one on this planet.
Yeah. And if I may here at the end, I'd like to offer to your audience two things. The first thing is I am doing shamanic. Upcoming is I think my last free shamanic healing. So for anybody who would like a healing, just make sure you get on my newsletter. That's all you have to do. It's my name, DebbiDachinger.com. If you sign up there, you will get, you have to sign up on the Zoom link. And it's free. I've had people, like a lot of people, signing up every month to receive these from all around the world. And it is a beautiful thing for me to be able to facilitate these and use my shamanic gifts and use my shamanic lineage. So again, DebbiDachinger.com, just spell my name correctly. It's Debbi. There's no E, Debbi. And then the last name is Austrian. It's Dachinger. So DebbiDachinger.com. And the final thing is, I love this conversation that Shanna and I had and are curious, what star seed am I? I put together a video that breaks down the various star seeds across the galaxy. Plus, there's a report, and you can start identifying yourself physically, career-wise, where your strengths are, your weakness. That's at DebbiDachinger.com/starseed. DebbiDachinger.com/starseed. And I speak at lots of events all around the world. So I have a cruise coming up, 2026 March, to Greece and Turkey. It's a mystery school cruise. If you guys want to come, there's lots. So just be on my mailing list so you can be aware of some of the beautiful things that you can participate in and get your free gift at DebbiDachinger.com/starseed.
Thank you, Debbie, for that. That's awesome. And then, of course, your book and your podcast.
My podcast, you can find me on any major podcast platform, including YouTube. So it is Dare to Dream with Debbi Dachinger. And I'd love to have you join. I love reading the comments. I love seeing where people are at. And then all of my books are available on Amazon.
Awesome. Thanks for spending this hour with me, Debbie. I really appreciate you and all that you do and your service to humanity, and for sharing your gifts, and also for me personally for sharing all of your wonderful, clients that you work with. So thank you so much.
Thanks for bringing soul to the world. Much appreciated.
Sense of Soul.
Thanks for listening to Sense of Soul podcast, and thanks to our special guest. If you want more of Sense of Soul, check out my website at senseofsoulpodcast.com.
It's time to awaken.